French President Emmanuel Macron is currently in Beijing walking a diplomatic tightrope amidst escalating China-Japan tensions over Taiwan and a looming trade war on electric vehicles. The stakes are critical. Macron seeks to rebalance Europe's economy and secure a peace push for Ukraine. However, with Beijing urging France to break with the US-Japan axis, the question remains: can Macron champion European strategic autonomy without falling into a geopolitical trap? We analyze if Paris can truly balance Brussels' interests against Beijing's global ambitions. Welcome to Think Tank.
Our world is becoming unhinged.
The Washington Post has reported that French President Emmanuel Macron and Chinese President Xi Jinping pledged deeper cooperation during the recent Beijing visits, focusing on global turbulence and bilateral ties. Macron specifically urged China to use its influence for a ceasefire in Ukraine, seeking a moratorium on strikes against critical infrastructure, a call to which Xi offered only general support for all efforts that work towards peace. The visit is critical for trade, as Europe seeks to address a massive trade deficit with Beijing amidst ongoing disputes over subsidies for Chinese electric vehicles. The leaders signed new agreements in areas like aerospace and green energy, with Xi vowing to expand China's market access to foster mutually beneficial cooperation. Ultimately, the dialogue underscores a diplomatic balancing act, while China seeks to strengthen ties with France individually, supporting its independence. Experts caution this strategy aims to undercut the united stance of the broader European Union. The visit tests whether Paris can rebalance its own interests while championing the security of the continent. According to the dispatch, a diplomatic rift has deepened between Japan and China following Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's statements regarding potential military intervention to defend Taiwan, citing the island's proximity and vital sea lanes. Takaichi suggested a Chinese invasion would constitute an existential threat to Japan, triggering its right to collective self-defense. Beijing swiftly condemned the remarks, viewing any mention of intervention as a violation of its sovereignty. This political friction has spilled into the cultural arena, leading to the abrupt cancellation of a Japanese pop star's performance in Shanghai, illustrating the high sensitivity of the Taiwan issue across all sectors. This escalation places critical strain on East Asian stability. Tokyo's position signals a significant shift in regional security calculations, demanding close monitoring of China's response and the potential involvement of US forces stationed in Japan. The world is watching this dangerous diplomatic showdown. As Macron navigates Beijing high-wire diplomacy, Europe's economic survival, Ukraine's fate, and Taiwan's tensions collide, forcing France to choose between strategic autonomy and alignment in an era where neutrality is no longer an option.
Tonight, the geopolitical tectonic plates are shifting in Beijing. French President Emmanuel Macron is not just walking a red carpet, he's walking a razor's edge. This is a quadripartite balancing act, unlike any we have seen. Europe is bleeding with an investigation into Chinese EV subsidies on one side and China's chokehold on rare earth materials on the other. Macron is here to demand de-risking without triggering a trade war. He calls it reciprocity. Beijing calls it containment. Can he rebalance the massive trade deficit while securing vital green tech? It is a gamble on European economic survival. A red line draws from Paris to Kiev, then arcs to Taiwan. But the stakes go far beyond tariffs. Macron is demanding Xi pressure Moscow for a Ukraine ceasefire. Yet Beijing plays a double game, viewing French strategic autonomy as a wedge to drive between Europe and NATO. The tension has now boiled over into the Pacific. Following Sani Takaichi's explosive remarks on intervening in a Taiwan emergency, China is demanding France pick a side. With Donald Trump looming over the US-Japan axis, Beijing sees Macron as a potential buffer against American encirclement, while Xinjiang delegation quietly tours Paris, a subtle diplomatic job from Beijing. Macron must answer the ultimate question. Can France act as a stabilizing power in the Indo-Pacific, or will European priorities force him to retreat? In trying to bridge the gap between Europe's interests and Beijing's ambitions, Macron risks falling into the chasm between them. In this new era of great power rivalry, neutrality is no longer a luxury, it's a liability.
And to provide more analysis, joining us from Beijing, Mr. Inart Danjin, Senior Fellow at the Thai Institute and Chairman of Asia Narratives Substack, and from London, Dr. Mohsen Salamoni, Political Economics Professor at London University. Welcome, sir, to Think Tank, and both are distinguished guests. Mr. Tangini, we start off with you. Does China see Macron's Ukraine ceasefire request as a chance to deepen its sway in Europe or a threat to Beijing's Moscow alignment?
Neither. Quite frankly, Macron, whose popularity ratings are dismal, somewhere between 12 and 14%, the last poll that I looked at, is trying to look more like de Gaulle. He wants to, say that he's standing up for France, but he does not represent the EU. He doesn't have that role, and certainly there's so many divides within the EU. This idea that somehow France is the key part of it is nonsense. You have north, south, east, west, all vying in different directions. It is a body which has 26 members. Unfortunately, very few disagree. And unfortunately, they're looking to expand as if having complete disunity will be solved by adding more voices.
Sir, so at this point, sorry to interrupt you. Can you elaborate more about they are looking to expand in who are they are quote user?
Well, the EU has been looking to expand. Turkey is in there. I believe there are, I can't recall off the top of my head, but I remember there were 6 or 7 names that were in there, mostly expanding into areas of the south. Turkey would be a huge one for the EU, but it would bring a very different perspective. I don't think that would be a controversial statement in itself. But adding more people to a dysfunctional body will not make it work. So if that's your question, I would stand by that. In terms of how China views this, they are looking for trends. They're looking for sincerity. They have this sense that what Macron is really asking for is for them to intercede with Russia, which is not going to happen because they don't have the ability to call up Putin and say, do this or do that. nor would Putin have the ability to call up Xi Jinping and say, hey, you should do this or that on Taiwan. So at this point, he's asking for something that he, is impossible for China to give. But on the other hand, he's not offering anything from Europe.
Sir, why do you see that it is impossible for China to give in light of the relation between China and the United States at this point as we talk in this interview?
Well, it's called sovereignty. It's this notion that these countries are going to do what they believe is in their best interests. Putin is winning the war in Ukraine. He's not interested in what China thinks. China was not happy about the Ukrainian war. It cut off a large part of the Belt and Road alternative routes that they had going through Ukraine. But the issue is that, they feel that Russia was provoked. In 2014, there was a political putsch that was backed by the US and the EU. There was attempts to solve it. And unfortunately, both Macron and, not Macron, I'm sorry, Hollande, who was the president of France, and Merkel, who was the head of Germany, both admitted afterwards that they had no intention of abiding by this peace claim. So this idea that somehow one leader can tell another leader what to do, I think that's a very novel idea. Donald Trump attempts to do it all the time, but that's not a really serious question. If you're saying that China will ruin its relationship with Russia by doing this, by threatening to withhold, whatever, stop buying oil or something like that. No, that's not going to happen. China has its own interests. It's been battered by the US. It's under a containment policy, the same way that Russia is, and they are going to band together against what they perceive as a common threat. Does that answer your question?
Dr. Salmoni, can Macron's bilateral trade gains survive the EU's aggressive probes into Chinese EV subsidies and the critical rare earth supply dependence, sir? Dependence, not independence.
Good evening. I believe Macron's entire foreign policy depends on one idea. Europe, and that idea is he thinks that Europe should be not forced into the US-China trade war and in the conflict between China and United States. And he would like to see an independent Europe and keeping the economic tie with the Chinese or with China open. Reduce dependence on China, reduce dependence on China in terms of especially, the AI technology and the critical mineral. That is the idea of Macron's, what he tried and the concept he tried to apply.
Then, sir, on the ground, Macron's intentions are all good intentions. He has no he doesn't have any otherwise intention. All he wants is the sake of all the countries and of the European Union.
Absolutely. I believe Macron, he tried to help himself and really try to come up with economic policy to support France. And because Macron, the internal policy there, he has problem. He has, he has debts, major debts, and he has a conflict also of policies in France itself. And therefore, by coming in and find alignment or a good relationship with China, especially in terms of limited technology coming out of China without depending on the security, which technology security coming over China, is coming in because agriculture to try to force and open the Chinese market in terms of beef, dairy, and poultry. This is really his interest, Macron, to try to increase the trade, between him and China and reduce the deficit between him and Europe also, and the deficit between Europe and USA. That is the main purpose of Macron coming in and to try to interfere and to try to really get Europe together and China there, and without going in the conflict between USA and China. Here there is one point which is very important. Europe is divided and it's not really together. And also the trade tariff between United States and Europe, it's causing some really major problem to the trade in European country. And this European country today to try to move away from the big alignment of United States with United States and go. And therefore, that's why they have to sign a deal which is called the Mercosur deal with the Latin America and the Argentine and Brazil and the
who has to sign, sir, with them?
Yes.
Who has to sign with them?
France, Europe, the European country, they've signed the deal with Mercosur, and does help them in terms of and in terms of agriculture, and some of that deal on the Mercosur, especially agriculture, could has an impact on France, because and also the farmer are a very strong unity in France, and that's why the Macron here, he tried to balance between that deal and try to balance what is going into France, and to balance exactly and shift and find another big market in China itself.
Mr. Salmoni, just to wrap up what you've been saying and understand more your narrative or your point of view and perspective, is that Macron is doing this and is working very hard on this. And you read that he has problems internally in France and in his political issues in parliament, of course, internal political problems in France, that he should concentrate more with than what he is doing now, or you see that what he's doing now is going to get good results towards France's economy?
That is absolutely right. And I have to mention also the war, the Ukraine-Russian war, okay, has not served the purpose of anyone other than really France, other than United States and China themselves there, because, and it has, that war has weakened the economy of Europe.
Okay, I'll be back to you again. I'll leave it there, sir. I'll ask Mr. Tanjani, of course, first, what he thinks of what you said now about French President Macron and his own opinion about your narrative, sir. And is Beijing exploiting strategic autonomy to actively weaken US-Japan axis amidst rising Taiwan-related military tensions, sir?
No, the United States is its own worst enemy at the moment. You can see that, quite frankly, with Modi and Putin meeting as we speak. You have Macron coming. Remember, he's presided over the departure of the Sahels, 7 countries.
So you're not okay
Africa.
with what Dr. Salmoni said? You see a different perspective.
I see that he admires Macron. I do not share that.
You see, he admires Macron, and you cannot share this.
I don't share that because I look at his results. It's not a term of personal.
In your last question, Mr. Tanjani, you said that Russia is winning.
Not Tanjani, it's Tangen.
It's, sorry?
My name is Einar Tangen. I don't know who Mr. Tanjani is.
I'm very sorry, sir. Mr. Iron. I'm very, very, very sorry again. In your first answer, Einar, you said that Russia is winning on the ground.
Yes, it is. I don't think that
However,
is a
analysts
revelation.
and commentators all the way say and read that this is a political theater and a trajectory that Vladimir Putin is expanding or is showing everyone, but on the ground, Russia is not winning.
Well, I don't know do you have a source for that? Because I would love to read it. The fact is, whether it's an American or European defense expert who actually knows what they're talking about as opposed to politics, they all agree that, and you can read about, the territories that Russia has taken. They just took another city, that it was at a four-way crossroads, very important in terms of supply and things like this. So this idea that somehow Putin is losing seems a little bit far-fetched, unless you want to tell me who it is that is saying this.
No, it was an interview yesterday between a Russian and an American, of course, distinguished guests, sir, that
I'm sure they're distinguished, but the American might be slightly biased.
this was said in the
I'm an
interview,
American.
sir, on Qnews, sir. And of course, you have the link and you can watch on YouTube. Sir, can you continue your answer?
Okay. Russia is not winning. In terms of how this turns out, there are things that Russia has to do for a long-term peace. It's not going to be possible to unwind all of the security arrangements that NATO has set up with all these countries. If you go to Latvia, Estonia, etc., Poland, they are extremely paranoid about Russia. But Russia has to stop thinking in old terms. And what I mean by this is, in the past, it always wanted buffer states between itself and any other power that it deemed to be hostile or potentially hostile. But in an age when you have drones and when you have hypersonic missiles, it doesn't matter if you're 5 meters away or 500 meters or 5,000 meters. There is currently no defense against Putin.
Mr. Tangen, is Beijing, and I did ask you this question, exploiting strategic autonomy to actively weaken the US-Japan axis and rising Taiwan-related military tensions?
No, if you look at the timing of what happened, Donald Trump was hat in hand coming to Busan. Didn't stay for any of the G20 meetings, but he wanted to talk to Xi Jinping. He was hoping he could make a deal on rare earths, the same rare earths that would be used to create the missiles that would be potentially aimed at China. China politely declined. So he's been making noise. He's been trying to gain leverage. I believe that he did, in fact, encourage the new Prime Minister of Japan to start rattling her saber. This is a classic Trump way. See if you can cause some trouble and see what happens, see what shakes out of it. This is not the only time that he's used this strategy. So in terms of what she is doing, she would never breach this ambiguity policy that both Japan and the US have had, unless she had Washington's acquiescence. So at this point, it's not what China is doing. It is simply what the US is doing, both by not participating in the global system and also by creating these kind of uncertainty and promoting kind of, in terms of trying to get leverage, trying to create trouble, especially things like with Taiwan, which is a bright red line, and risk a war.
Dr. Salmoni, does Macron's pursuit of strategic autonomy risk fracturing the unified European stance, or is it now a necessity against US-China rivalry, Sire?
No, I believe Mr. Macron, all right, and I did not admire Mr. Macron as our guest here. I was just pointing out the policy of Macron or what he intending to do. Macron here, he has benefited quite a lot from the split in Europe, especially when you find you come in and look at Europe. The North Europe wants tech protection. The Southern Europe, they went to agriculture protection, and the Central Europe looking for security in technology and on that. And Macron comes here and he becomes as maybe as a dealer or negotiator to try to bring peace and try to bring trade deals with China without causing a conflict or causing a problem with the tie and the alignment of the Europe with United States. Because China looks at France as the top producer in terms of agriculture. They are a global premium agriculture in terms of beef, in terms of dairy, in terms of poultry there. And that market there, it's been open for France in China. And that will bring quite a hell of a money to France. The second thing is the protection of the aerospace. Airbus, China here to try to move away from Boeing and concentrate quite a lot on the aerospace and the Airbus, the big plane of the Airbus. And here that is suit Europe and it suit France more than Europe, because now the Chinese will be looking for a bigger plane, aerospace plane, and here France will be interesting on that. France offered to China a limited technology in the aerospace in order not to let the big aviation company of China take a favor or take a really or made them a favor on that side. Therefore, here we can see that really involvement of Macron between Europe and China, it's going to benefit, number one, France and Europe also. I believe Europe is in a mess in terms of policy and in terms of the development in Europe. The growth in Europe is very low. And also investment, the new investment coming into Europe is very low right now. And
Mr. Iran Tangan, do you want to answer Mr. Salmoni? He's not a fan of Macron. Or he
certainly sounds like a fan of Macron. He believes everything Macron's doing is very wonderful. Maybe he differentiates it on a personal basis. But the issue is that Macron has come to China and offering nothing. Yes, he wants China to solve the problems that Europe has in terms of their competitiveness. That's not something China can solve for Europe. Europe has to solve its energy issues. It needs to solve its costs. It has a tremendous amount of money. It was a colonial power. It raped and robbed around the world, and it still has a lot of that wealth. But it's going away because they do not have the kind of products as necessary. And I'm sorry, I'm a huge fan of French wines and also French food, but that is not going to save France.
Okay, Mr. Tangan, well, let's get over this point. Given the Takichi's factor, how does China plan to use France's nuclear power to counterbalance the evolving East Asia security equation from your own perspective, sir?
Well, I don't know exactly what you mean. China is actually ahead of France in terms of the number of nuclear power plants it puts up on a yearly basis. Their 3.5 is considered one of the best. France certainly has something that in theory should work very well, but it has not been proven. So if you're saying that somehow China is going to use France's nuclear program to its advantage, I think you're mistaken. The fact is, China's way ahead. The number, I mean, not by a small margin either.
Okay, that was Mr. Inar Tangan, Senior Fellow at Thai Institute and Chairman of Asia Narratives Substack, and Dr. Mohsen Salmouni, political economist professor at London University. Thank you very much, both distinguished guests, for your special insights and your valuable discussion and informative knowledge, of course, and intellectual, and, of course, most important, your time. The debate is clear. Macron's diplomatic tightrope walk tested Europe's ability to act independently. The true cost of strategic autonomy, economic survival, peace in Ukraine, and stability in Asia remains the ultimate geopolitical question. That brings us to the end of today's episode of Think Tank, which always unveils the complexities of our changing world. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Ronald Qassas.